while they were protesting violence. Earlier in the evening, she treated a woman hit in the eye with a ricocheted rubber bullet and helped others wash away the tear gas that blurred their vision. So really doing the Lord's work out there. Fellow street medic Gage Grosskreutz said she was helping people deal with tear gas as well. Mayor McKenzie, who had spent several evenings working with him throughout the summers of protests in Milwaukee, stopped to say hello. A 22-year-old with only 20 hours of street medic training to go on with her CPR certification, she looked up to Grosskreutz, a licensed paramedic. Another guy that visited anyone Mary McKenzie didn't recognize was telling people he was a medic too, but he made her uneasy. He had an AR-15 slung across his chest. No medic she'd ever worked with carried a weapon like that. And again, these are kind of the things that are really raised my eyebrows about Kyle Rittenhouse. Some medics arm themselves with handguns as a last resort for protection, but the priority was really helping people. Usually they were paired with security teams. Mayor McKenzie's medic partner gestured to the young man. Avoid that guy. He looks like bad news. She would later learn the man who'd drawn her partner's warning was Rittenhouse. So she was right. The two walked on. About 10 minutes later, Mary McKenzie heard two men yelling at each other. She couldn't tell what they were saying. Shots rang out. A man fell to the ground about 50 yards from her. Before she could reach the man, later identified as Joseph Rosenbaum, a 36-year-old, a group of bystanders had picked him up and placed him into a hospital SUV standing by for injured people at the edge of Froedtert South Medical Center's parking lot. Back up! Mary McKenzie yelled at the crowd trying to live stream the scene. Give the patient his privacy. She looked into the man's eyes. They were open and motionless. Terrific. Jesus. As the SUV carrying Rosenbaum sped across the parking lot towards the hospital's back door, Mary McKenzie's medic partner told her the shooter was still in the area. The two medics crouched behind a brick hospital sign, hoping it would be enough to protect them if he opened fire again. Her fellow medic didn't tell her until later the gunman had just run past them less than 10 yards away. Jeremiah saw the shooter flee, and he could tell the teen was scared. He knew he messed up. He panicked. Even his people knew what he did was wrong. They were shouting at him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I saw it on their faces. I saw it in their body language. And it was really kind of insane that nothing like this has happened before. You think about why they're coming here. You think about what they want and what they believe when they pull up to protests like these. It's kind of insane that nothing like this has happened. So Kyle Rittenhouse, again, he lives in Antioch, Illinois, about 20 miles from Kenosha. Although it's not clear how he got to the scene of Tuesday night's protests, it's not surprising he decided to go. Rittenhouse considered himself a member of some sort of militia, trying to protect his life and property, according to social media posts and video interviews. Hours before the shootings, he stood up in front of a boarded building for an interview with the Daily Caller. People are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business. Again, like driving all the way from Antioch, 20 miles away from Antioch, Illinois. 20 miles, I mean, what? That's probably like 40 minutes, 50-minute drive. I don't know. Antioch to Kenosha. I guess we could Google Maps it, see how much he was really out of his way here. But I mean, it seems like what is the thought process again of someone who is going to put themselves, like, are you telling me it's a rational thing, a really rational thing to go to, I mean, I don't know what business he was standing in front of there, but I mean, are you going to really drive 20 miles? Like, I'm thinking about towns that are 20 miles away from me, to go stand in front of businesses with guns at age 17. Like, that's what you're there for. Protecting businesses. Okay. Yeah, I see where this is, going here. So yeah, if you can put this in the kind of the map quest here. So yeah, Antioch. There. This is. Oh wow. This was bike. I had it on bike there. It is a 31-minute drive. 33-minute and 33-minute there. So yeah, it's about a half an hour, so it's not too bad. Okay. So yeah, it's a little just across the border. So Antioch is on the far northern border of Illinois, but going across state lines, that is illegal. So that's an important thing to note. So I mean, if he doesn't even get charged for that, he will be hit for that again. So yeah, Rittenhouse idolizes the police. His social media accounts before they were taken down on Wednesday were full of logos and memes supporting law enforcement and showing off his uniform as a member of the Illinois-based Grace Lake and Lindenhurst Law Enforcement Explorer program, which offers young people an inside look at policing. Rittenhouse was the middle of 3 children. He lived in Grace Lake for 4 or 5 years, according to a neighbor who declined to give her name. The children appeared to have a difficult home life growing up. These kids didn't have a chance, she said. Very, very sad stuff. That, I mean, to drive. I mean, this is not. I do have sympathy, I think, for Kyle Rittenhouse here. Like, he kind of went through the meat grinder of life, but I mean, people go through the meat grinder of life and don't end up 20 miles away, standing in front of a random business with an AR-15 to quote unquote protect that business. I'm sorry, I'm dubious. But yeah, on January 2017, his mother filed a restraining order against 2 boys at her son's middle school, which was very sad here. They had called him names and threatened to, quote, kick his butt, court records say. They'd also followed him and taken photos of him on social media. A month earlier, they had called his family's apartment and told Rittenhouse's mother she needed to watch her son or he would get hurt, she wrote in the court filing. So very, very scary stuff. Rittenhouse's mother never got the restraining order. She didn't show up for a court hearing, and the matter was dropped. Several former classmates at Lake Community High School in Antioch told Vice News they remembered Rittenhouse as short-tempered and easily offended. He was known for his love of the police, guns, and Donald Trump. So, yeah, now back to Jeremiah here. He was near the back of the pack chasing Rittenhouse as he fled the parking lot where Rosenbaum died. Jeremiah was more concerned about getting into his car than he was about trying to catch the gunman. Anthony Huber was in the front of the group. Jeremiah didn't know Huber as well, but he had seen him around. A white ally, Huber had participated in June's Black is Beautiful ride, a 16-mile trek to raise money for Milwaukee community groups. At marches throughout the summer, Huber and his skateboard were a near constant presence. He served as a scout, rolling ahead of marchers and radioing back about police or hazards along the route. Last time Jeremiah saw him, Huber was confronting Rittenhouse, who had fallen as he ran. Those brave souls were the ones who ran toward him trying to grab his gun. They were heroes. They were trying to save lives. And keep in mind what's going on here. This is a guy who had shot someone and is running wild through the streets. Like, and right-wingers are like, well, he shouldn't have attacked him with a skateboard, which is the only thing that he had on him at the time. Are you kidding me? Like, think about what you would do if you're in that situation. Again, after years and years of training from right-wing people especially, rush the shooter. I mean, you can't have gun control. You just got to rush the shooter, silly. Like, that is, again, I think very, very important here. Another man stopped a couple feet away, a handgun and a cell phone in his raised hands. A moment later, he moved toward the gunman again without raising a gun. He was shot in the arm. On a video, the wounded man can be heard calling for a paramedic. Everyone was yelling, "That's the shooter," and the police just let him pass. So that is quite something. So Beth, the sheriff, has said the officers in squad cars and armored vehicles has said that Rittenhouse approached with his hands up, but probably didn't understand the shouts of the crowd because of the noise and chaos. According to his attorney, Rittenhouse went back to Antioch and turned himself in. So, yeah. In the response from Rittenhouse's attorney, in a statement released late Friday, Rittenhouse's lead attorney John M. Pierce, the law firm of Pierce Bainbridge, characterized the shooting as self-defense. Pierce contended Rittenhouse was accosted. Rittenhouse was being chased by riders when he heard a gunshot behind him. He turned to his face with an attacker lunging toward him, reaching for his rifle. So again, trying to disarm someone who just shot someone and chasing him and trying to really, in a kind of a mob-style situation, overwhelm someone who they perceive to be an active shooter and then rush them and then get him down and neutralize the threat. A growing mob chased Rittenhouse down the street until he fell. People kicked him and bashed him over the head with a skateboard. In fear for his life and concerned the crowd would either continue to shoot him or even use his own weapon against him, Kyle had no choice but to fire multiple rounds against his immediate attackers, the release says. Says the defense there from the attorney. As Mary McKenzie, the street medic, left her hiding place near the hospital, she came across a young woman in a shot. A young woman in distress. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Mary McKenzie asked. "Do you need anything?" "No, I'm not okay." Huber's girlfriend, Hannah, screamed through tears. "My boyfriend just got shot." The woman, I think this is a skateboard guy. The woman was traumatized but not injured. There was nothing Mary McKenzie could do. Once Mary McKenzie reached the car, she got a text. "Has anyone heard from Gage?" She texted back, not worried about the paramedic she respected so much. "I just saw him 15 minutes ago. I'm sure he's fine." He was the guy shot in the arm. So, with no medics available to respond to his shouts for help, Gross Kurtz supervised his own first aids, instructing a man who had been live streaming the shooting on how to apply a tourniquet. Which is pretty insane. Gross Kurtz was wearing a hat and backpack that identified him as a medic when he rushed toward Hoover, according to a close friend who didn't want her name used. And yes, he had a gun because we're allowed to protect ourselves, but the gun was down, not pointed. I don't know who they're referring to there in the quotes. Yeah, so his partner medic that night, who had first tried to help Huber, took Gross Kurtz to 2 different hospitals, the friend said. At first, they were asked to clear the waiting room because an injured officer was coming in. From the second, he was airlifted to Froder in Milwaukee for surgery. Jeremiah also considers Gross Kurtz a friend. He's a super cool, laid-back guy. Jeremiah said of Gross Kurtz, who is white, he's a great advocate, a great ally, always speaking up for minority groups. He's just that person who everybody loves talking to and gives great advice. Mary McKenzie also asked Gross Kurtz for advice as well. She'd once called him from a Milwaukee protest where she encountered a woman with an open wound and didn't know what to do. Mary McKenzie said she'd never see him draw a weapon, not even when he was hit by a car driving through a crowd at another protest over the summer. Gage is a very kind and peaceful man, and people who are trying to argue that he's not are just wrong. He would, I will say this, the guy who's a friend here, so I guess you can consider that for what you may. He never would have pulled that gun unless he thought his life was at risk. Less than 24 hours later, the woman Mary McKenzie saw outside the hospital was back in Kenosha, speaking to fellow protesters during the place where her boyfriend had died. Huber had so much love in his heart for the city, he took down an armed gunman with nothing but his effing skateboard, and he took that effing bullet. Still traumatized by the events of the night, Jeremiah stood and listened. "I think we have to continue to fight," he said later. "We're trying to stop a war, not start another one. We're trying to end racism, fighting for a better future for our kids and grandkids. I won't let this stop me." So I hope they still continue to go out there, and it looks like they're going to have a new fight in Rochester ahead of them. So, all right, we're going to move on, talk about some fun stuff, see what Andrew Sullivan's been up to. How about that? That is next. So do not move. Do not stray. We will be right back with more here from the newest episode of Newsflash. We thank you so much for listening here today. Really do appreciate it. We're talking about Andrew Sullivan, the very, very interesting commentator from, I guess, I don't know. He left New York recently. A New Yorker. I think that's where he was at recently. I mean, and he was a New Yorker columnist. Now he writes his own letter. And Jack Crosby has a great piece about him in the Discourse blog. So he writes, "It's impossible to cancel Andrew Sullivan. He is, as Ben Smith wrote in his latest New York Times column, one of the most influential journalists of the last 3 decades. For the majority of that time, he's occupied positions of influence or lucrative columnist roles on the mastheads of half the major magazines in New York. Now, after voluntary parting ways with New York, he's on Substack, where his blog has now over 75,000 subscribers." If you don't know who Andrew Sullivan is, I mean, he's a funny guy, but I guess you don't want to. If you don't want to read him, you don't want to read him. But on the off chance you're still interested, the most pertinent anecdote is this about Andrew. In 1994, Sullivan, the then editor